Welcome to Nashville and Beyond.
I'm Brian Copeland.
And I'm Zach Copeland.
And we're a father-son duo helping people buy, sell, and thrive in Middle Tennessee.
But this isn't just about business. It's also about our family and our community.
It's a front row seat to how we live, work, and serve right here in Music City.
So buckle up as we explore Nashville and Beyond. So, quick question. Do you actually like New Year's resolutions, or do they stress you out?
I'm not a big New Year's resolution fan because I believe that they set up a false expectation. So for me, it's neither of those. They don't stress me out. I just believe that they're not always the best thing to do.
Okay. Well, today's episode is the one about New Year's resolutions. The goals we make, the ones we keep, and the ones we quietly forget by February.
Well, before we talk about doing it this year, let's talk about our track record. So, as I said in our intro, I have done resolutions before. Hear me clearly. I'm not going to sit here and say, I don't do New Year's resolutions. I think we all do that. Like when we start the new year, I've got to go back on my eating plan correctly, those kind of things.
Yeah.
But to me, that's not a resolution. A resolution is something you say, I'm going to do all year long. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of my resolutions have been focused around business and that kind of thing. And the things that really work for me have been written down. When I write things down, when there are things in a calendar that tickles to the future, that kind of thing, it works well for me.
Well, we had talked about in a staff meeting we had recently for church what our New Year's resolutions were, and one of mine was to eat healthier this next year.
Yeah.
Because I just want to eat healthier. I tend to go towards quick, fast, cheap food. I love me some Whataburger. I love me some Chick-fil-A, some Panda Express, some Barbecue. Shout out to all those places if you're listening. Crumble. I haven't had Crumble in a long time, actually.
I'm proud of
in
you.
a really long time. Part of this medicine is like my sweet tooth is not really there anymore. But, I've done New Year's resolutions in the past. I think 2021 was the year that I resolved to start becoming fit and going to the gym. And so that was when I started going to the gym, and my fitness journey really started was in 2021, and I'm still here, and it's now a daily part of my life. In years past, I was a smoker, and of course, every New Year's I would resolve to quit smoking, and it never worked until finally it did, and it stuck. So those are some of the resolutions I've had.
Esther argues with me that you were a former smoker. I'm like, yes, he smoked. She goes, no, he didn't. I'm like, yes, he would be standing outside the church smoking in that corner. He's like, she'd say, no, he wasn't. And we've just gone around and around and around about it. So, I think ultimately how you set your expectations, that's what's going to decide what you're successful on and what you're disappointed about.
Yeah.
So.
Well, maybe the question isn't, do resolutions work? Maybe the question is more of, how do you get them to work, and how do you set up systems and processes so that they can work?
That's totally you.
I know.
Process.
Yeah. Well, when I started recently was to stay on that subject just real quick, is I started writing down my calendar, because we've talked in the past about we're a calendar-oriented family, calendar-oriented business. We do things by the calendar, and I just miss stuff on the calendar sometimes because it's an app I have to go check, and I like to check it once in the beginning of the week and then kind of get an outline of what's coming up, and then if things were added or changed early in the week for later in the week, I'm shocked when they happen on Thursday or Friday because I'm like, I didn't see this when I checked it on Sunday. So writing it down on Sunday nights, and then kind of going back and refreshing it throughout the year has helped me over these past couple of weeks, I think, a lot. So
yeah, and let's be honest. I mean, most resolutions don't fail because people don't care.
Yeah, I think they fail because people just don't have a strategy. There's a difference in a plan and a strategy, and you can say, I plan to lose weight, or I plan to eat healthier. But what is your strategy behind that? How are you actually making steps, even small steps, to make sure that happens, you know?
Yeah, and you and I have talked a lot about when we started this podcast, and again, not bashing you, hear me clearly. You had a lot of questions about, wait, is our audio quality where it needs to be? Do we have this? Do we have this? And I said, it doesn't matter. We've just got to start.
Yeah.
And for someone who, you're a bigger picture, you like to see the end product after 3 years. I'm that person also, but I've paralyzed myself in that. And I think a lot of people who listen, our friends even, they could be in a situation where they're trying to over-systemize things and they just never start. And then you wake up 3 months later and it never happened. And so I think that you've got to think through why you're doing it, the reasons that keep you motivated toward it. It's not that you don't care. It's just that sometimes we're just too big on perfectionism, and you just got to do it. And I think now we're entering season 2 of this podcast, and we look at the mistakes we made. We look at the things we wanted to change, the things we wanted to do better, but we started.
Yeah.
And I always say, and we'll talk about more of this in the next segment, it's always a quilt that we're putting together. And every day we got to bring a quilt square with us. But I'll talk about that later.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of people also having immediate results, especially my generation and younger, helps a lot because we grew up where in the digital age, everything is instant. Gratification is instant. Your ability to see results is almost instant. And older generations didn't have that. You know, we had
to wait, like, for example,
right.
when we took pictures,
right.
we had to take them to process them.
Right.
And then I had to wait 3 or 4 days. When they did 24-hour film processing to get overnight, that was a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. And like when you were communicating with someone, if you wrote them a letter in the mail, it had to get there first, and then they had to read it and write a response and then mail it back to you. And now we're so used to emails and texts where as soon as I send it, I see that it's been delivered. Yeah. And in some cases, I see the red receipts because you have red receipts turned on. So I know you've got that message immediately. One of the things recently that I did was, with your help, of course, was remodel the downstairs den in my house. And it was out of necessity, not necessarily out of desire to do it right away, but something happened and so it needed to be done. One of the best parts of that for me was after we laid out the leveling mix and it dried, there were some ridges in it because I think candidly we probably just didn't have the right product or mix it correctly or something, because what I've seen is like they have these polymer mixes that it's just really smooth. But what we used was more of a cementitious mix, and so there was like cement and stuff built into it. Anyways, I say all that to say the ridges and the bumps and the humps that were in the mix, I just got a finishing trowel and went in and started scraping them and smoothing them down. And that instant, I'm doing the work and instantly I see the results, was so cathartic to me and so nice. And it just tickled a part of my brain that needed to be tickled, where you do work and then there's immediate results from it. So,
well, sometimes resolutions are about micro goals.
Yeah.
And we're so focused on the big goals. And so sometimes it's really nice to have that small, tiny goal as we go along. So, and I think that what hurts us in this is, interruptions.
Yeah.
Yesterday I posted on Facebook about working out and how you have to finish before 8 a.m. That's for me, because the way my life functions. You have a very different life, the way you flow through your days. My days can be very chaotic because I choose to be that way. You and I have had this discussion about, how the life you want to have versus the life I want to have, or the life I do have. And sometimes those interruptions really get in the way. So you've got to realize, as you're setting goals, resolutions, whatever we want to call them today, understand that you've got to own your day rather than the day owning you.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's very similar to something that you and I had talked about recently, which was, do you live your life or do you let your life live you? And we just discussed that, and talking about planning my personal life, because amongst the many hats that you wear in my life, one of them is life coach. And not just business coach, but like life coach. Where do I see my life going? Where do I want to move next? So I think when we come back, we will talk a little bit more about realistic goals that we've had, small wins that we've had, and ways that you can achieve those things as well. So we'll be right back. All right, we're back. Let's talk about goals that actually make sense. So, Pop, what does a realistic resolution, almost said revolution, resolution look like for you? You kind of alluded to it earlier, but what does realistic mean for you in this sense?
Measurability.
Yeah.
And I know for your abstract goals in life, like I want to be a better person, or I want to be. We had this staff meeting. Well, we talked about this yesterday in staff meeting.
Yeah.
When we talked about goals for 2026, I said I want to make sure I find positive in everything.
Mm-hmm.
How is that measurable? I can't sit there and say, okay, a little tick mark for every time you say something negative that I make positive, or that someone in my life crosses over a path and there's something negative, or some thought I think that's not measurable. So I'm going to excuse that mentality and say, what are the things, like, for example, if we're looking at finance, what are those measurable goals to say, I'm going to work X amount of time to make X amount of dollars?
Yeah.
So for me, goals need to have a measurement. When we set up this podcast,
Mm-hmm.
we said we need to reach this many listeners, this many subscribers. As you can see today, you're not seeing video on YouTube.
Yeah.
That was a thing that we started, a measurement piece, and we found that the views people were listening on YouTube, but they weren't really viewing it for that reason, based off of self-reporting.
Yeah.
We could see that there were hits on YouTube, but they weren't huge.
Yeah.
Our big listenership was coming from Spotify
Yep.
and from Apple.
Yeah.
So that was a measurement piece when we set it up. So literally, that's something that I've learned with you, is every time we set a goal, you want to see that measurability.
Yeah.
So that would be my answer.
Yeah, I learned about SMART goals. It's an acronym, SMART, SMART goals, probably in college, and the acronym stands for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. And so when you set a goal for yourself, whether it's a resolution for the new year or any goal in life, as long as you can break it down into those 5 parts, specific. Okay, let me get this goal as specific as possible. Be a better person. Not very specific. What does be a better person specifically to you mean? Measurable. How am I going to track my progress on this goal? Is it I have written 3 thank you cards this year? Or is it I've sent 11 birthday cards this year? Attainable. Is this something I can actually do? If your goal is be president and you're 18, that's not an attainable goal for you at this point, because you have, 17 more years before you can become a president, before you're even eligible to become a president. If your goal is be a member of Congress, the average age of a member of Congress is like 85 at this point. So you got a ways to go before you can achieve that. Realistic, again, is this something realistically that I can achieve?
And we see that in Nashville all the time with people who come here to come sing
Oh,
and they
yeah.
have no talent.
Yeah.
They just don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or they think, I'll move to Nashville because I am the best in my town. And then you get to Nashville and you are in the bottom 10th percentile of the 5,000 other people that are doing the exact same thing you're doing. But then the last letter of the acronym is time bound. And that is you have to set up, okay, by this date, this is the result that I want to see. So SMART goals, just a little tip for anybody out there setting resolutions.
Thank you for that. That's awesome.
You're welcome.
And speaking of time, I always say when I was out speaking, because I did a lot of circuit speaking back in the day, I talked about the principle of time management versus time ownership.
Mm-hmm.
I hate the word time management because that puts you subordinate to time.
Mm-hmm.
That means time is owned by someone else and you are managing it for someone else.
Yeah.
I'm a time owner. I own every piece of my time every day. You see it in how I function. You see it in our family calendar. You see it in the systems that are set up. You see how everything is blocked correctly because I'm owning that day as opposed to it owning me. And so, like as I was saying earlier with the Facebook post, there's certain things that have to be done. Like today, I haven't worked out yet, and that breaks my Facebook post, but I need a rest day.
Yeah.
And so if I feel like it at 3:00, I may work out.
Yeah.
But it's not on the calendar today. But everything else is very clear. Even a visit to the grandparents is on
I saw that on the
calendar
calendar
today. And because at Christmas this year, we didn't get to play music, and that's one of my dad's biggest loves. And we just ended up talking more at
Mm-hmm.
this Christmas dinner than we usually do, and we didn't get the instruments out and play and all that. So Dad gets to do that, and they also, what the little ones don't know is Mom and Dad got a new puppy.
Yeah.
And so we're going to see the new puppy today. They
Yeah.
just got it yesterday. They got a little teddy bear puppy.
There's new puppies all around
Crazy?
in the
Crazy.
Copeland clan.
And that, again, part of the goal is this time ownership. You won't hear me say time management. I just don't like that.
If you were Dad, you would call it time stewardship.
Oh, absolutely. Or just flowing through life as your dad.
Yeah. Where I'm at in life right now is really kind of affecting the goals that I'm setting, because I'm not quite midlife crisis age. I'm getting close, but I'm not quite there. I'm in this in between in your early 30s where a lot of the relationships that you built in your 20s have faded, because those relationships were built around lifestyles that you just don't live anymore. Energy that you just don't put out anymore. And so the season of life where I am is my goals are about personal development.
Yeah.
Dad and I went to visit a member of our congregation in the hospital yesterday. And one of the talks that we had on the way there was, I texted you and I said, I vented to Dad about some things. And one of the things really that I was talking to him about was that I feel like I'm trying to get better at a whole lot of things all at the same time. And part of that is just being a productive member of society and just being blessed as a human being to experience life as a human being. And, you could have been born, if some people believe this, you could have been born as a bug or a pet, or you could have been, popped up on this planet as a rock.
Right.
And you wouldn't have anything to do with your life.
The conversation with Esther last night. At
Yeah.
But we digress.
But I feel like I'm trying to be a better son, a better business partner, a better worship leader at church, a better homeowner, a better steward of my finances, a better steward of my time, a more fit person. There's all these different things that I'm trying to get better at, and I'm trying to do them all at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be exhausting and overwhelming sometimes, because I feel like I'm pulled in a bunch of different places, and thankfully I'm young and I have the elasticity of my spirit to be able to do that. But it doesn't mean it's easy. It's hard sometimes. So.
Well, and I think you're also learning, like you've been in real estate now for a good amount of time, where you look around, you've sold more than a lot of people have, even who've been doing this for 5 years or so. And you're learning more about, we had a talk the other day about a law degree for you.
Yeah.
Because, you're learning how you enjoy contracts.
I love contracts.
You enjoy fighting for people.
Mm-hmm.
You had a situation you showed me yesterday that's probably going to take a little bit of advocacy.
Yeah.
And that's something, you told me that day. You said, I just like finding people who've been done wrong and fixing it.
Yeah.
And that's what we do in real estate every day. So you said, hey, what would you think about a law degree? You may see a JD behind Zach's name in the next few years as a goal. We don't know yet.
Yeah.
But goals start with, and resolutions start with talking them out there. I mean, we were literally working on that dang floor.
Yeah.
Scraping up floor. And he was like, hey, can we talk about something, and oh yeah, he's showing me a blister right now. It's awful. It's disgusting. But he's like, hey, can we talk about this right now? And, talking about what's the layers that we can put on to career that take us to a new level. That's why I got my broker's license after a few years of doing this. That's why I started speaking. That's why the podcast started, because it's about putting layers on. And those things are just wonderfully important. And I think we can focus so much on perfection rather than just doing it correctly, rather than just starting it correctly to head towards somewhat perfection, but we'll never get there.
A good mantra for people to remember is progress, not perfection.
Yeah.
And that is a mantra that I have to remind myself of all the time as well, because I am honestly, I get paralyzed because I want things to be perfect. There's this, and I guess it kind of goes back to my childhood, but there's this fear of shame or embarrassment when you do something that's not perfect. And so trying to figure out in advance all the things that could possibly go wrong so that I can avoid those things puts me in a state of paralyzation where I just don't start because I keep imagining all of these what if this happens, or what if you say some fact on a podcast that's totally wrong and you make yourself look like a fool and everybody laughs at you,
Right.
which is not going to happen, but
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, you could totally say something about being on a cruise or in a hospital when you found news out, like Ginger Minch
Like Ginger Minch did.
on that show. Anyway, that's deep inside jokes.
Deep lore. Yeah, very deep drag
but,
lore.
You got to, part of this perfection piece is learning rest and flexibility, though.
Yeah.
And like last night, part of our staff meeting 2 weeks ago was you want to set lighting up for your studio here, because if you follow us on Instagram, please do, NAB Nashville, you do a lot of videos for us, and you're like, I'm not happy with my lighting set, I'm not happy with my camera set. Can we set a goal of getting the lighting set up? So on the calendar, I put on there for last night, we're going to take this time, we'll set the lighting. Well, last night rolled around and we weren't expecting the floor would need to work in your house. We weren't expecting the friend of ours in the hospital you would have to visit.
Yeah.
We weren't expecting our new puppies, all these things that were going to take time. And it was like, hey, do we really need to do this? There's some things that we can be so rigid with on a calendar and in time blocking. Sometimes you just have to have that flexibility to say, you know what? We don't have to do this now.
Yeah.
And that's perfectly fine.
Yeah. And I apologized to you about that last night.
And I don't understand why. I was so confused by this. I'm like, what is going on?
It was because I just know how you value time and time ownership. And every time that I forget something that's on the calendar or I miss a deadline, I know that it hurts you a little or disappoints you a little, even if you won't admit it. And so I wanted to make sure you were aware that I understand that your time is valuable and that when you put things on the calendar, there are other things that you could have filled that time with that you didn't. And it was more of me just making sure you knew that I was grateful that you had set aside that time for me and for helping me.
Well, you're welcome. I was very confused last night. We're also going to talk about this offline, but since we're talking about it here for everybody to hear, I was confused by your responses. I'm like, what did I say in my text to make you feel guilty? Like literally everything was like, I don't care either way. Let me know. And then you were like, your time is so valuable. I'm so sorry. And I'm like, oh no, is he watching? He's watching some Netflix cheesy movie right now that's got him all sentimental or so. I didn't know. So thank you for because it really wasn't a big deal to me. But I kind of enjoyed having the night to not set it up. But,
well, I was also on a dopamine deficit last night, so I was in my feels a little bit. Yeah. And then of course the scraping of the floor. I was just sitting there with nothing to do but think about how we were supposed to do something and now we didn't because I've missed it on the calendar or whatever. And so I was just, I was like, oh, I feel like I need to apologize.
Well,
and so I did.
I accept that apology. So, well, resolutions don't live in a vacuum, and they're shaped by the season of the life we're in. So, one thing we don't talk enough about is how different life seasons change what's possible. So, I think about life phases, and you and I had this talk on the way back from Alabama at Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
Had this talk because you were like, and I hope this isn't too personal. You were like, I don't want to ever disappoint you and Dad because I feel like y'all have these. I mean, are you comfortable talking about that?
Sure.
Okay, you put in your words what you said to me.
I think the way that I phrased it was, and I'll probably flub this, so I'm just going to try to paraphrase as best as I can. You and Dad, Greg, have such high standards of life and expectations for all of your kids. And part of the conversation was me saying that, Micah and Esther have been raised under those standards and expectations. Mm-hmm. And I was not raised under those standards and expectations. And so for me, it sometimes feels like when it comes to the standards of the family, I am a 4-year-old in the family because that's as long as I've been a part of the family. And so I've had to unlearn some of the bad habits, bad worldviews, bad self views that I've had through my, teens and 20s. And it's just hard sometimes because, y'all have such a high standard and you're both very successful at what you do and people know you and know who you are, and people want your opinion and value your time. And, obviously I'm incredibly grateful to be a part of this family and to be able to experience these things with y'all and to learn from y'all. But it's just tough sometimes, you know?
Well, why I bring that up, had you wanted you to talk about it, is, this whole idea of how priorities shift with age, family, work, and health, that whole piece. Because what I told you that day, just a few days ago, was focus on where you are with your life mirrors and who's around your age and where they are in life, because you're so surrounded by those who are your senior, and we're in different life phases. I'm in a life phase where, I'm wanting to spend more time with my family and more time on health and fitness, but I'm still wanting to be very successful and make the most money I can on the road to retirement. So that's a life phase piece for me. So, when we're looking at these resolutions or goals, they shift with all those pieces.
Yeah.
With my age, I don't really like the word age and, that kind of thing. It's more of a life phase, because I think you can be 30. My friend Alex Milshine in Ann Arbor, Michigan, he was super young, but he was already in a life phase of wanting to get toward retirement. And his goal was, I will be retired by the time I think he's 40. He wanted to be retired by then.
Yeah.
Well, he's in the same life phase as me, but he's a lot younger than I was. So, I think that you've got to think through these priorities and where they fall into your life phase. And your, health is a piece of it. Is where does your health fall right now? Can you actually do that priority right now? Are you in a healthy place to do it? Back to your acronym that you gave earlier.
Yeah, SMART goals. Yeah. And for those who are just joining us, or maybe you've not listened to all the episodes, in the fitness episode, we kind of talked about the story of where you're at now in fitness and where that story began. And it started with a conversation that I had with you at the end of one year, where I was like, I don't want you to die young. I want you to be here for a long time, and I want for you to be able to meet, Micah and Esther's kids when they have kids one day. And one of the things that Dad has really, really helped me with is showing myself more grace, because I can be pretty hard on myself. For a long time, I was very, very difficult with myself and would talk down to myself about myself. And I think a lot of people are guilty of that. We mess up, we make mistakes, and our first instinct is to belittle ourselves. And the world is already going to do that. The world is very good at doing that. What you need from yourself is unconditional love. And in the words of RuPaul, if you can't love yourself, how in the hell are you going to love anybody else?
Can I get an amen?
Amen.
Right.
Amen.
Well, and one thing you taught me is one of my favorite things. You may have heard it somewhere else, and if you did, we'll credit that person. You said this is our first time ever living this life. Talk a little bit about that notion.
Yeah, so it's this concept of everybody that you encounter, this is their first time doing this too. This is their first time being a human, as far as we know. This is their first time having life experiences. It's their first time dealing with relationships. This is your first time parenting an adult.
Yeah.
This is your first time parenting children. This is my first time having two dads. Everybody in life is experiencing everything for the first time. And when even the older people in your life, when you think, oh, well, they've got a lot of experience and they have lived a lot of life, that's true. But where they're at in life right now is the first time they've been there. And the way that they are able to navigate things right now, while it is an amalgamation of all their experiences and their years on this planet, every day that they wake up, it's their first time living that day too. So I would just, encourage our listeners to remember, whenever you encounter someone who handles something maybe not in a way that you would handle it, or in a way that you want to handle it, don't think too low of them and don't think too highly of them, because it's their first time too.
Yeah, and I love that whole philosophy, and I've really grasped onto that for grace for myself, because you talked about earlier, you don't give yourself grace. I mean, that was one of the things when I went through therapy before I started my weight loss. I believe, and again, we're going to talk about in the next segment we're going into, is that mindset, getting ready for it.
Yeah.
And I had to give myself the gift of grace constantly because I just didn't do it. And when we come back, we'll talk about resolutions that don't show up on the checklist. So some of the most important resolutions aren't measurable. Not all resolutions are about doing more. We talked about this in the intro. So some of it is about, that abstract, non-measurable goal of patience, presence, and balance.
Yeah. We had mentioned earlier, some people's resolutions are to be a better person. And I think everyone wants to be a better person. At least most people, probably not serial killers, but they probably want to get better at killing. But
right.
Leave less evidence around. But the mental and emotional and spiritual resolutions can sometimes be harder than the physical resolutions because they're not as easy to measure. They're not as easy to be specific about, and they're not as easy to set up time limits for. For instance, if your goal for this new year is, I want to be kinder to people, you can't set a time limit on that, because hopefully that's a character change that develops into a permanent character trait of who you are.
Well, I think about one that I had to coach you through. I mean, you mentioned earlier in the podcast here today that I've served as a coach for you also. But do you remember probably your very first coaching philosophy?
Yep.
Go ahead. What was it?
Find the yes.
Yeah. And that was something I saw in you when it's like, we can't talk about getting contracts bound. We can't talk about a buyer successfully closing. We can't talk about a seller finding the right buyer for the home until you can find the yeses in life.
Yeah.
And I had to work on that core with you for a long time. And immediately when I said it, you can't, since we don't have YouTube now, you can't see his face. He did the smirky grin because he was like, I know exactly what you're talking about. Because that's such a core. And I even see it now in our church staff meetings, everywhere we go. Even when you work with other people, I see you get frustrated. You did this when you chaired the fall festival.
Yeah.
You were like, they're not finding the yes.
Yeah.
And you came back so frustrated and understanding that piece.
Yeah.
So, there's these parts of abstractism that we can't put a measurement on. It's just a constant reminder to say, okay, Zach, where's the yes in this? And you'd sit there and go, I don't know. Where is the yes? And I'd give you 20 yeses. And you're like, oh, yeah.
Well, talk a little bit more about finding the yes, what that means, how to implement that in your life, where that philosophy came from.
Well, this is about buyers and sellers. My job in real estate, when I represent my client, is to find the yes. Just now, recently, I had buyers who saw a property. The home does not qualify for FHA. So that means it's off the list. No, it's not. It's the house they wanted. It has the acreage they want in the school district they want at the price they want. Everything was a no in front of them. Everything. So I went to the seller. The seller was unrepresented. And they said, what do we do to make this happen? Because they wanted to sell. And I said, these are the options. And I gave that seller 3 options. One of those options was, let's write a contract that doesn't close for 2 years so they can get conventional financing. And the seller was like, I don't like that option. Okay. Then there's an option of lease purchase. And the seller was like, tell me more about that. So I walked them through that. That became a yes. Who would have ever thought? And I didn't tell the seller, this is what we have to do. I said, they asked me what options were there. There are yeses in everything. You went through this with a buyer recently where they were constantly putting no's in front of you. And we were at closing table, not closing table, but we were pre-closing. And I got with Kevin Kennerson because you were at the no. It's like the condo association management won't sign this questionnaire, so we're dead. I called the lender underwriter person, and they said, tell your buyer we're dead. And I wouldn't take a no.
Yeah.
I refused to take a no. And you know me well enough that where you were like, he's going to find the yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so literally Kevin Kennerson went way above, and because I kept forcing the yes. It wasn't that Kevin wasn't willing. He just wasn't in the know of where we stood to find that yes. So we spent an extra 24 hours beyond the time where I was told to tell them the deal is dead, and we found the yes.
Yeah.
So that's what's finding the yes, because there's always, even the most negative of situations, there is a yes there. It may not be the yes you like or the yes that's perfect, but there is a yes there.
Yeah. So how does that work in personal life? So for people who are setting goals, since we're talking about New Year's resolutions.
Yeah, let's give me an example. Let's think through a good example.
So for instance, someone says, I'm not in shape. I'm way overweight.
Yep.
I want to lose weight, and then they give all these reasons for why they can't do it. Maybe they're so overweight that they can't move, or they don't have time, or they don't know where to start. How would you find the yes in that?
Yeah, I had a situation like this in a business situation just last week where when I gave someone some hope and a yes, they threw back a lot of negativity at me. And first you got to focus on...
Was it me?
No.
Oh.
No, I was going to say, it's not you. No. It was the one about that one. I'll say it offline.
Okay.
And when you get that negativity, you got to take it like, again, that old cliche of the best way to eat an elephant is one bite at a time.
Mm-hmm.
And so you listen to all that negativity and you find that one negative piece, and then you search for those positives. So if someone says, I don't have time to work out, then what is the yes you can find? Do you have time every day to walk down your sidewalk to your mailbox and back? Do you have time for that? Those are baby steps.
Mm-hmm.
There's your yes. They can't give me a no to that.
Yeah.
Do you have time every day to stand up, go to a step, and do 20 calf raises?
Mm-hmm.
You've got time. Okay?
Yeah.
And so a lot of times we're so focused on the big picture, and this is what I said earlier in our intro. We'll talk about a quilt.
Yeah.
Every day we bring a block of quilt to what we do. And I'm going to use fitness just as the example today, because that's what many of you are thinking about right now as we go into 2026. When I started my weight loss, I looked at myself at 350, 360 pounds, and I could see myself at 190 one day, but that was a long time. I mean, you're talking 170 pounds to go to get there. That's a big journey. And if you're so focused on that end result, you're going to get discouraged and disappointed and just stop. So I look at everything you do as you bring a square to the quilt every day. And I started and said, you know what? I'm just going to go do yoga. The gym I go to has a Saturday morning yoga class, and I'm just going to go do that. And if you look at my Apple Watch data from 2024, you can see every Saturday there's a partial ring closed there. And then I would say, you know what? I'm going to go walk on Peeler Park down the street, and I'm going to just walk a half a mile. And that would be it. And then today, I'm not going to eat the banana pudding. I'm going to just have the banana instead. Mm-hmm. That was part of the quilt. And then I woke up at the end of January, and I'm like, this quilt is big enough to be a foot covering for me. And I'm going to keep on adding to that quilt. So I added, we're going to add weight training to it. And I'm going to do 30 minutes of just lifting weights for my arms. And I woke up at the end of February, and I was like, I have a nice lap quilt now. And then by the way June rolled around, I'd lost almost 100 pounds by June. Because every day I brought something that was a yes. And that's how you've got to look at resolutions and goals. You've got to say, what are those tiny yeses every single day? Because now I look going on 2 years later almost on my fitness journey, and I can fit a lot of people under my quilt. I can talk to people about, hey, this is what you need to do, what you can do. Here's some tools you can use, because I understand the full pieces of it. This year on my quilt, I'm adding a nutritionalist. So I'm going on a trip to Tokyo and to Bangkok, Thailand this year. And after that's over, because I want to enjoy all the Thai food and everything, I start with a nutritionalist. And we start meal prepping for me and you on New Year's Day. So again, those tiny yeses are part, and think of it, if you want a visualization, as a quilt, and every day you bring that, and you bring your thread, and you bring your backing, and you your backing or batting, whatever it's called, and you create a quilt throughout the time.
I love that.
Yep.
I love that. Well, we are going to close out today's episode with a friendly game of Nashville Rathers. We did this in our first season. I think we'll continue doing it in our second season. And the way this game works is that it's basically a this or that. So I will pose some questions to Brian. Brian will pose some questions to me that are this or that questions. And we're just going to go back and forth. So I know the first one, very easy. Morning workouts or evening workouts?
100% morning for me. If you don't work out in the morning, it's not going to happen. Again, as I said yesterday in my Facebook post, suck it up, buttercup. You'll get used to it. Do it in the morning. What about you?
Yeah. I prefer mornings as well.
That used to not be the case.
Yeah, that used to not be the case. But I just like, now that I've gotten to where I'm comfortable in the gym and happy in the gym, working out in the morning is a great mood booster and kind of keeps my mood stable throughout the day. So
are you a digital planner or a paper planner?
Well, by Copeland family rules, I'm a digital planner because everything lives on the digital calendar, on the Gmail calendar. But like I said earlier, recently I've switched over to also incorporating written calendar planning, and it helps a lot. So
that's what Emily does. She has a book.
Yeah. I don't know that I could do a book and carry it around with me because I like the big visual representation of it. But what about you? I mean, I think everybody knows this
100% digital.
Yeah.
I mean, I have so many Google spreadsheets. It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So.
Looking into this next year, are you thinking one big goal or a bunch of small goals?
Lots of small goals. I'm little bitty all over the time. I love those little micro goals, and I've got a ton for next year.
Yeah. I'm definitely with the one big goal for me this year, and it's nutrition.
Wow.
And, I think there are other things that I will also do, but I'm just not going to call them a resolution or a goal because I think having an overarching singular thing that you claim in the beginning of the year is what you're focusing on, for me, helps me to remain focused on that. So,
cook at home or eat out?
Eat out.
Ugh.
But that's going to be changing
Yeah.
because of my goal. But if you're asking what my preference is, absolutely. I mean, I love eating out. I mean, just because
Is eating out coming to our house?
Yeah, that counts too. But I do love, we went to Slim and Husky's the other night. Some of the best pizza in town. And, from going to Italian restaurants to Brazilian steakhouses to seafood places to regular steakhouses, Thai places, those are all specialty foods that you just can't possibly have all the ingredients in your house all the time for all these amazing different kinds of cuisines. So,
and I used to be an eating out guy. I wanted every meal out, and now I just want to be home all the time.
yeah.
I like eating at home. It just makes me happier. So, early wake up or early bedtime?
See, this is tough because I don't. It depends on how you define early. I mean,
so bedtime at 8 p.m. and rising at 5 a.m.
I would probably rise at 5 a.m. instead of go to bed at 8 p.m. Just because 9:30 is usually my bedtime. I feel like if I went to bed at 8, I'd be missing an extra hour of cuddles and snuggles with my babies. So
those cats.
Yeah.
There's no babies around here.
they're babies. They're my children. I birthed them.
I'm both.
Yeah.
I want to go to bed early and I want to get up early. So
Yeah.
And then finally, big New Year's Eve celebration or quiet New Year's?
Quiet. I'll be asleep before it strikes midnight. Absolutely.
But, last year we were on a cruise and we were celebrating it, and it was fun.
It was fun. Absolutely.
That's not our normal MO.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
we were with Kyle and Molly and Hudson and Hawk
And Kale. Yep.
And it was, I enjoy celebrating it in. So if I really had my true personality type, I'd be out doing the thing.
Yeah.
And so that's what I like. So, all right, that feels pretty honest about the start to the year.
It does. So today we've, talked about all of our resolutions from years past, resolutions for this year, how we approach those, what our goals are. And hopefully, as a listener, you've taken away some tips.
Yeah, but the big thing is, y'all, as a listener, you need to set your own goals. And I hope listening to us makes you want to go talk through it with someone else, because this is our first time really talking through it. And I think everybody needs someone to talk through about this.
Yeah.
Like, for example, we're going to be talking about our New Year's dinner this year. I haven't told you yet, but I told Mike and Esther yesterday they have to bring 5 to 10 things that were our biggest highlights from last year. That's discussing it because we get ready for 2026. So I encourage you, don't put these resolutions and these goals in your head. Get with your family, get with someone, and just talk it through, because that matters.
It does. It does. So whatever your goals look like this year, we're thankful for you. We're glad that you're here. We're glad that you've stuck around for season 2 of Nashville and Beyond. And we'll just keep putting out these episodes. We've got some exciting stuff planned for this season. Everything from Cinco de Mayo, which happens. I think that happens this season.
Yep.
Valentine's Day happens this season. Hopefully I'll have a husband by that point.
Yes, please, Lord.
Or at least a boyfriend. So
And please notice our new artwork.
Yeah.
Downloaded today, so you can see that there's new colors, there's new fashion, there's new all those things.
Yep,
so
absolutely.
You're going to see a lot of new things because we have a photo studio now, too.
We do. We have a photo studio. Super exciting.
Yay. So this is Nashville and Beyond. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
This podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only. It does not constitute legal, financial, or real estate advice. Listeners should always consult licensed professionals for guidance specific to their situation. Brian and Zach Copeland are licensed real estate agents with Compass 615-522-5100. Music Dusty Boots by Eco Weeks, Nashville and Beyond, copyright 2026.